Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you as always for stopping by. Let me start by saying it was a real pleasure speaking with the CEO and managing partner of Saiton Investments. This is Edwin Dande, ahead of Saturday's Mindspeak. You will recall we're in the Intercontinental on the top floor this Saturday. We serve breakfast from 9:30 and we start at 10. And have a look at the interview I did yesterday ahead of the Mindspeak to get a flavour of what Edwin's done and what he's achieved. And a very interesting model, I must admit, and I'm looking forward to hearing what he's got to say. So take a look at that little video clip. It's about 20 minutes, but it's pretty interesting. Macro thoughts chart of the day. Kingdom Holding, the company owned by Prince Al Walid, is down 20% since he was detained in Saudi Arabia. I have a sneaking suspicion he's going to be disgorged of his billions of dollars. Lebanon CDS explodes, worth remembering the leverage built up by local emerging market banks through buying C credit-linked notes versus international banks that get margin called. Which is a fair point, but you can see that we've had much higher geopolitical risk. Lebanon is in the crossfire. Buy Bitcoin overtakes buy gold as an online search phrase. And you will recall that my optimal portfolio at the end of last year for this year was long Bitcoin and then long Bitcoin, short gold. And I think that buy Bitcoin overtaking buy gold says it all. It was a good day again for Bitcoin bulls. The digital heavyweight has added on more than $300 in Asia. It's incredible. When I recommended it, it was trading around just under $1,000. It's been an exponential surge. Home thoughts, I like this from the real Banksy. Happiness comes from within. And I also like this quote from the Daily Kerouac: close your eyes, let your hands and nerve ends drop, stop breathing for 3 seconds, listen to the silence inside, the illusion of the world. The Water Boys, this image will be released later this month. It's a photograph by David Yarrow, and I'm pretty certain it's taken in the Amboseli. We visited the Amboseli in September 2013. I took this photograph of the elephants. Look at the elephant from behind to get a sense of the size of it. And also, what is most extraordinary is they are so light on their feet, you barely hear them move. I like this photograph, Amboseli, Kenya, Convergence of the Tribes by Marie Wilkinson and Cyril Christo. The Maasai herdsmen with their cattle and a herd of elephant arrive at a common watering hole. And then I took this photograph even before 2013, an ostrich in the foreground, elephants in the background. Of all African animals, the elephant is the most difficult for man to live with, yet its passing, if this must come, seems the most tragic of all. I can watch elephants and elephants alone for hours at a time. For sooner or later the elephant will do something very strange, such as mow grass with its toenails or draw the tusks from the rotted carcass of another elephant and carry them off into the bush. There is mystery behind that masked grey visage. An ancient life force, delicate and mighty, awesome and enchanted, commanding the silence ordinarily reserved for mountain peaks, great fires, and the sea. Political reflections. The Saudi Crown Prince is now accusing Iran of direct aggression. Accused Iran on Tuesday of direct military aggression through Yemen's Houthi rebels, ratcheting up regional tensions as the kingdom reels from a sweeping royal purge. Sunni-ruled Saudi Arabia and predominantly Shiite Iran have been trading fierce accusations over their involvement in the conflict in Yemen, in which they back opposing sides. Saudi Arabia has accused Iran of supplying missiles to the rebels. Tehran vehemently denied the charge and in turn accused Riyadh of war crimes in Yemen. The involvement of Iran in supplying missiles to the Houthis is a direct military aggression by the Iranian regime, the Saudi press agency quoted Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman as saying during a telephone conversation with British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson. This could be considered an act of war, he said. My conclusions are that in the background, advising the Crown Prince is Bibi Netanyahu, Jared Kushner, who spent a few nights there and staying up late till 4 in the morning, Trump, and MBZ of Abu Dhabi. And in this photograph, you'll see the French Minister of the Armed Forces, Florence Parly, meeting with the Abu Dhabi Crown Prince MBZ. Secret leaked Israeli cable confirmed Israeli-Saudi coordination to provoke war, says Mint Press News. I don't think it's a good idea, but there is a risk because the Crown Prince is extremely impulsive. On Sunday, just after Lebanese Prime Minister Hariri's shocking resignation, we'll get to that in a moment, Israel sent a cable to all of its embassies with the request that its diplomats do everything possible to ramp up diplomatic pressure against Hezbollah and Iran. The cable urged support for Saudi Arabia's war against Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. The cable stressed that Iran was engaged in regional subversion. Israeli diplomats were urged to appeal to the highest officials within their host countries to attempt to expel Hezbollah from Lebanese government and politics. The Economist is calling it Saudi Arabia's unprecedented shake-up, even by standards of recent palace intrigues. It was a dizzying Saturday in Saudi Arabia. On November the 4th, the kingdom announced that scores of people had been held in a massive anti-corruption sweep. Best-known figure was Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, a billionaire businessman and investor who owns big chunks of American firms such as Citigroup and News Corporation. Detainees also include 10 other princes, dozens of current and former ministers, the chairman of Saudi bin Laden Group, a construction conglomerate, and the owner of NBC, the largest satellite network in the Middle East. Some are reportedly being held in Riyadh's opulent Ritz-Carlton, which told paying guests to leave and stopped accepting new bookings. Private jets were grounded in a bid to stop wealthy businessmen from leaving the kingdom. Still, the arrests send a message to other would-be critics. MBS, more than any other leader in decades, has fashioned himself the sole face of Saudi policy. If his ambitious plans falter, Saudis will know whom to blame. And this is an interesting photograph. The guy on the right has arrested all the others in this Saudi Arabian picture. Yemen's Saudi-backed former President Hadi is under house arrest in Riyadh due to enmity with the UAE. The Lebanese Prime Minister, who resigned from Saudi Arabia, is also believed to be under arrest in Saudi Arabia. So we've got a quite extraordinary situation here, and I think the market, even after a sharp rally in oil, is underestimating the chance of this spinning or tipping over its tipping point. Hezbollah is actually the only resistance movement that's managed to stalemate the Israelis ever. And then I remember the Kapuscinski quote, "The choice of that moment is the greatest riddle of history." It is authority that provokes revolution. This occurs when a feeling of impunity takes root among the elite. We allowed anything, we can do anything. This is a delusion. But it rests on a certain rational foundation. For a while, it does indeed look as if they can do whatever they want. Scandal after scandal and illegality after illegality go unpunished. The people remain silent. They are afraid and do not feel their own strength. At the same time, they keep a detailed account of the wrongs which at one particular moment are to be added up. The choice of that moment is the greatest riddle of history. It's from the Shah of Shahs. South Korea, Trump reassures President Moon about North Korean fears. This is a photograph from the arrival ceremony at the Blue House in South Korea and the guest book signing. Trump said to Kim Jong-un, "North Korea is not the paradise your grandfather envisioned. It is a hell that no person deserves," he said. Take you back to my piece, September 2017, a screaming comes across the sky. I was talking about Gravity's Rainbow, the quest undertaken by several characters to uncover the secret of a mysterious device known as the Schwarz Gerät, the black device, slated to be installed in a rocket with the serial number 00000. As the world watches Pyongyang, I cannot help wondering if Kim Jong-un has read Pynchon, which speaks of a screaming comes across the sky. It is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. They must have guessed once or twice, guessed and refused to believe that everything always collectively had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. International markets, Japanese stocks are on fire. Over half of the Nikkei 225 with RSIs greater than 70, says David Inglis. The Nikkei 225 is at the highest level since 1992. The Dow closed at an all-time high for the 58th time this year. Currency markets, euro, dollar, let's take a look, 115.96, dollar index 94.83, dollar yen 113.77, Swiss franc 0.9986, the pound 131.57, the Australian dollar 0.7661, India rupee 65.095, South Korean won 1113.65, the Rial 327.14, Egyptian pound 17.6485, and the South African rand 14.2156. I think the South African rand is at risk of a big downside asymmetric move. The dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart, rather pleased with that rebound which I've been sort of predicting. Euro dollar 115, where are we? 95. I still think we're going to visit 114.50. Commodity markets, Brent was at $63.61 earlier this morning, but it's traded lower. But it's still close to a near 2.5-year high of $64.65. WTI last trading at $57.07. Still not far off. It's $57.69 a barrel, reached earlier this week, which was the highest since July 2015. I'll put up a chart of WTI. As I said, this is all about the kingdom. Increased geopolitical risk. I don't think we've spiked yet to the high. I expect to move higher here because it's a bit of a black box, and I think we could get some more developments which will be equally dramatic as to what we've seen. Gold, 1278, not getting much of a lift at the moment. PDVSA rating cut to C from CC by Fitch on renegotiation of government debt and missed payment on November the 2nd. Take a look at what happened to the bond price. Let's move on to Africa. The Paradise Papers show how Africa's elite avoid taxes abroad as they do at home. Former president of the UN General Assembly creates an offshore trust that gets a lucrative airport contract in Uganda, benefiting both him and his daughter. An opposition figure in Zambia is listed as a director in an overseas company that has interests in mining and nickel operation. And the brother of Ghana's former president is the head of a company that does consulting for the West African nation's oil and gas development. These are some of the revelations from Africa documented in the Paradise Papers. Obviously, the bigger revelations were around Glencore in the DRC, but we've already spoken about that. The leaked documents also show how multinationals who are often accused of plundering national resources continue to gain access in Africa. For instance, the DRC, the Paradise Papers show that the mining multinational Glencore gave the Israeli billionaire Dan Gertler a $45 million loan if he secured a mining contract from the government. Gertler was previously mentioned in a UN report for giving money to the DRC government to buy weapons and finance its war in exchange for a monopoly on the country's diamonds. In Burkina Faso, Glencore protested after officials sought $29 million in unpaid taxes and penalties, eventually paying only $1.5 million. So many African countries are poor because they lack freedom, property rights, markets, and the rule of law. Couldn't agree more. The long-term way to get more dentists and mosquito nets in Africa is not Western aid or charity, it's freedom and growth. Those who want Africans to have better lives need to encourage African countries to move toward the rule of law, free trade, property rights, and open markets. Let's go to Zimbabwe, where it's really taking an extraordinary turn. Mugabe's wife, Grace, rises to the pinnacle of power in Zimbabwe, says Bloomberg. Robert Mugabe fired a vice president whose wife, Grace, accused of plotting against her husband for the second time in 3 years, highlighting the First Lady's rise to the pinnacle of power in the Southern African nation. The dramatic dismissal of Emerson Mnangagwa, otherwise known as Crocodile or Lacoste, on Monday, came a day after Grace Mugabe publicly accused the former spy chief of plotting against the president. In 2014, similar allegations led to the ouster of Mugabe's then-deputy Joyce Mujuru, who, like Mnangagwa, fought in the liberation war against white minority regime of Rhodesia. It is clear that Grace Mugabe is calling the shots, said Alex Magaiso, Zimbabwean law lecturer. No other person has wielded so much public power as Grace has, apart from her husband. She's certainly the most powerful person in Zimbabwe at the moment, after Mugabe. Mnangagwa, who enjoys support in the military and among war veterans, will have to decide whether to go quietly or to seek to reverse his downfall, either by challenging Grace Mugabe in the party or by forging links with the opposition. As things stand, ZANU-PF's old guard is gone, and Mugabe's have opened another opposition front as they have to contend with Mnangagwa's supporters. Look, my conclusion is very simple. The promotion of Grace will not last a moment longer than her husband's life. And I referred to all of this, when I was quoting Hunter S. Thompson's The Age, there is no honest way to explain it because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. It feels as if Zimbabwe is going over right at this moment. South African all-share closed up 18.81% year-to-date. That's a new record high. Dollar Rand, about which I'm bearish and looking for a minimum target of 1440. Take a look at this 6-month chart. Nigerian all-share is up 37.73% so far this year. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 41.22% so far this year. 85% of the $3 billion from Angola's sovereign wealth fund is yet to be invested. It's just sitting in quantum bank accounts, according to Paradise Papers. Quantum charges 2 to 2.5% for managing the capital, earning Jean-Claude Bastos de Moret $60 to $70 million per year. Put up a photograph of the gentleman in question. He's a Swiss Angolan and close friend of the president's son. Cabinet Secretary Rotich says he's in no hurry to review the interest rate cap. We're still monitoring the situation, he said. Some of the froth will come off the banking stocks because of that, because I think a lot of folks were expecting that to be repealed at great speed. East African Portland Cement reports a full-year earnings per share loss of 16 shillings and 35 cents a share. Revenue was down 21.903%. Loss from operating activities was 1.3 billion. Loss before tax 1.712 billion. Loss after tax 1.47 billion. Earnings per share lost 16 shillings and 35 cents versus a profit of 46 shillings and 6 cents previously. Sales revenue for the year reduced by 22%, driven by production challenges and downward pressure on retail prices due to excess supply. Cost of sales reduced by 15% on account of volume reduction and curtailment of unwarranted rebates and discounts. Shareholders have come together and are agreeable to a recapitalisation plan with one earmarked option being phased or instant cash injection from the sale of assets, including the idle and fully mined land, which is subject to government approval. These were poor results, signalling further softness, but the NAV is considerably north of the share price because they're sitting on a big land bank. Uchumi has appointed a new Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Andrew Dixon. Uchumi's share price is down 25.64% this year. Nairobi All Shares up 21% year to date. I was saying over the weekend that this was the best time to buy Safaricom if there is some weakness related to the NESA boycott. Safaricom is up a total of 33% on a total return basis this year. I said in my piece over the weekend, any share price softness is an opportunity for investors to load the boat for the next leg higher. NSE 20 is up 18.91% so far this year. Thank you once more for stopping by. Hope to see you at Mindspeak.